session, which is a session discussing a very interesting topic, school-based assessment towards holistic development of students. For your information, this session will also be broadcast on our online platforms for our online participants. To those who are watching this broadcast session on your gadgets, feel free to ask your questions in the comment section. We will collect the questions and pass to our panels. I will now pass the floor to the moderator, Datin Cynthia Yolandas. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Vanita. Okay, it's such a nice feeling to see all of you very relaxed, right? Now, a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers and everyone present here today and online. As mentioned by Dr. Vanita, today's topic of discussion is classroom-based assessment towards a holistic development of students. Now, let me introduce our esteemed speakers. Now, to my left is Yang Bahagia Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli bin Abdul RAZAK, who is an educationist and scientist, who has served as the 6th rector of the International Islamic University, Malaysia, since 2018. He was the Vice Chancellor of USM from 2000 to 2011. He was the first recipient of the prestigious 2017 Gilbert Medal. He was an invited speaker at the Nobel Dialogue in Sweden and also in South Korea. Recently, he was appointed as a member of the Qatar Foundation Higher Education Strategy Advisory Panel. He is so accomplished and well-known, and we are very privileged to have him. Okay. And we give him a hand. Thank you. Our second speaker, just next to Tan Sri, is Dr. KHODORI Ahmad, obtained his doctorate in the field of educational testing and measurement from the University of Sussex, and has been involved in the area of in this area for more than 30 years. He was formerly the Deputy Director, Production of Malaysia Examination Syndicate. He is presently active doing consultancy jobs with various higher learning institutions and other organizations in the area of testing and measurement. His main academic and personal interests are in the integration of holistic assessment in the teaching and learning and the translation of philosophy of education into practice. Okay. Our third speaker, which is next to Dr. KHODORI, is Dr. Rahimah Adam. Is presently the Deputy Director of the Learning Management Sector at the School Management Division. She has been working at the Examination Syndicate for 18 years, with her last post, the Deputy Director of Examination, heading the Assessment Policy Sector before joining the School Management Division. Her research interests include assessment for learning, authentic assessment, and teacher training in assessment. She has a lot of experience working on projects related to educational assessment. Can we give her a hand? Yes. And our final speaker is Professor Dr. ABTAR KAUR, is currently a Professor of Innovative Digital Learning and Director of the Digital Learning Hub at Asia Pacific University. She has also been appointed to the prestigious position of the UNESCO Chair on Harnessing Innovations in Technology to Support Teachers and Quality Learning. It includes equipping teachers and professionals in education with state-of-the-art knowledge and tools to enhance hybrid learning, which has become increasingly important in the post-pandemic learning context and assessment. All right, can we give our 4 speakers a big welcome? Okay, before we start, I would just like to give a very short introduction so that we are all on the same page as to classroom-based assessment in Malaysia. Now, starting in 2021, the government began a reform plan that saw the end of summative high-stakes examinations like UPSR and PT3 in the Malaysian education system. Now, replacing this high-stakes examination, MOE introduced the classroom-based assessment as a way of uprooting education towards a more progressive and continuous assessment system. Therefore, CBA is perceived to be a more holistic assessment where it emphasizes the combination of the formative and summative context under the umbrella of school-based assessment. So CBA is conceptualized as one of the continuous assessment process in teaching and learning to obtain information pertaining to the development, progress, abilities, and mastery of the students in accordance with the intended curriculum goals. Additionally, CBA occurs via formative and summative contexts, which many scholars perceive as a holistic assessment system. Now, MOE highlights these several objectives. Monitor the students' existing knowledge and learning progress, rectify the students' strengths and weaknesses in the learning process, examine the effectiveness of the teaching process employed in the classroom. So classroom-based assessment gives full autonomy to teachers to assess students by introducing formative assessments. So today's discussion focuses on CBA towards holistic development of students. We already know that many scholars perceive CBA as a holistic assessment system. But how does that help in the holistic development of a student? Now, holistic development here, when we talk about holistic development, focuses on the whole child rather than strictly on academic or performance metrics. This dynamic approach to teaching uses various types of teaching and learning. So it establishes supportive and positive environment where educators teach students how to learn instead of the traditional technique of rote memorization that emphasizes what to learn. So students get the opportunity to expand their curiosity and discover answers to self-directed questions. So in summary, CBA is a method that aims to promote the holistic development of students by evaluating their learning progress in a classroom setting. Right? And with that, we will begin this forum by inviting Professor Emeritus Dato Sri Zulkifli to share his ideas and thoughts on the topic.
Thank you very much, Prof. Cynthia, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, I'm very impressed to see the numbers at this late night. Somebody must have bribed you something to stay, knowing that you also have a long night. So I'm really very impressed, and I hope I can share some of my concerns and also the little that I know of. I am a teacher still, and I'm very concerned with what is going on. Now, I like to pick up with the word holistic. I think this word has been bandied around more often than not, and we are now trying to grapple to find out what holistic means. Until we have got the context of what holistic means, then we will perhaps face a lot more problems. For example, is a classroom-based education a holistic one? I'm not too sure, whether. But my point of view, basically, if you were to talk about holistic, I want to go back to the very fundamental of what education in Malaysia is all about, and that is the national education philosophy, the falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan. That would be, I think, the framework that we need to work on, so that everybody is on the same page, and therefore understanding what holistic means will come out from that sort of a philosophy. Now, the little that I understand from this Falsafah Pendidikan Kebangsaan of 1996 in particular, there was an earlier one, Falsafah Pendidikan Negara, but there's a little bit of change in 1996, that talks about that kesudahannya at the end of the day, we want to produce a balanced and harmonious student. Pelajar-pelajar yang seimbang dan harmoni. Yeah? And on what basis? And they gave 4 bases: intellectual, emotional, physical, spiritual. And these 4 needs to be balanced so that we can create this harmonious human person at the end of the day. And it is belief also, it said, based on the devotion and the devotion to God. Yeah? Kepatuhan kepada Tuhan. That, I think, is my own idea of what holistic means. At the end of the day, we want to get a better person out of the education system. And there is, if you read on, it talks about pelajar-pelajar mencapai kesejahteraan diri. Yeah? I cannot translate the words kesejahteraan diri in English because we cannot translate it. It is basically a local terminology that has laden with so many other values and nuances around it. But at the end of the day, it tells you this person that you want to create is at peace with himself. He knows what he wants. And then at the end of the day of the falsafah says, then these are the people who can contribute. Boleh menyumbang kepada keluarga, masyarakat dan negara. To me, if you take that in the totality, this is what education, a holistic education, to me is all about. So narrowing it down to just one particular notion of intellectual or physical, and forgetting about emotion and spiritual will not be holistic. And I think we realize when the pandemic comes in, these are the lacunas that we need to address. We find that many of our students are not able to cope emotionally. They have no spiritual resiliency, as it were. So those are the things that I feel for all this while we have forgotten about it, perhaps for the simple reason that these are things that is not easily counted, it's not easily measured, and therefore it's convenient just to leave it by the side. But when the pandemic comes in, suddenly we find that these are the 2 very important mechanisms that we need to teach our students if we want to avoid this so-called mental health issue. Mental health issues now hinges on how do you emotionally and spiritually manage yourself, apart from just the cognitive, the intellectual part, or the physical part, as it were. So it becomes very, very important for me now to understand that holistically means you have to balance these 4 things. No matter what, English, mathematics, science, or whatever it is, these 4 elements must be there so that the student will eventually be able to be that person that we want to actually train. And here in my university, we call it the whole concept of humanizing education. In other words, deriving a better human person, not a better engineers or a better doctors or a better teachers or a better politician, if there's such a thing as a better politician. We want to create the human person first. And then we go into the actual technical or academic part of it. Yeah? And coincidentally, in 1996 was also the year that UNESCO announces the 21st century 4 pillars of learning. And the 4 pillars of learning mirrors very much the falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan when they talk about learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, and learning to live together. We are good at learning to know and learning to do. We are particularly hopeless at learning to be and learning to live together. And learning to be is basically understanding yourself, about self-analysis, about you understanding other people, about intercultural dialogue that you want to carry out. And all these things are basically the essence of what education should be not only for now, but also for the future. Increasingly, I think those are the things that at the end of the day will make a person, quote unquote, an educated person. Not the exams, not the assessment per se, not the numbers that we have been talking about, you know. So we see the failure in many of these things that the students may achieve academically good, but socially they are almost a failure in that particular sense. They are not able to interact. They are not able to understand what's going around them. And this is the demand now today, how do you create this group of people in the context of holistic education. And I come back to the whole idea where the classroom alone is enough to produce that holistic person. You know, and to my mind, I think classroom and schools are something which is invented alongside the Industrial Revolution. These were the factories, as it were, to produce labor for the Industrial Revolution. Before that, there's no classroom. I still remember when I was in school in the early 60s, yeah, we still have classes under the trees. We still have, you know, teachers not using the classroom the way we use it today. Everything has to fall in the classroom. We still have education that we can interact with the environment. And these are the actual learning that we go through, the experiential learning, as it were, that broaden our sort of a breadth of what life is all about, not just livelihood, which is now the focus of education, what life is all about through education. And that is where I think the holistic idea comes into picture. So I want to get into this context that while we want to make this assessment, what are we assessing? Are we assessing as what we have been mentioned, the cliche that anything get measured, get done? This is a very management kind of a axiom. If you cannot measure, then you don't have to you know, belabor on it. I'm part of PADU. When we look at the 6 student aspiration, knowledge, skills, leadership, thinking, dual language, and then we have got what do you call ethics and spirituality and national identity. Out of the 6, these 4 are well looked into, but when it comes to ethics and spirituality, national identity, we are nowhere there, because we do not know exactly what to measure, and that exactly is the issue today. Are we developing that person that Malaysia would want for the future, or are we just creating a mechanical sort of subject for them to earn a livelihood and be that at the end of it? So I'll stop there for now. I don't know whether I've stirred enough hornet's nest, but let's see.
You can go on.
Thank you, Prof. Okay, now can we invite Dr. KHODORI?
Thank you very much, Cynthia, Tan Sri, Dr. Rai, and Prof. Talking about holistic and humanized, working in lembaga peperiksaan for many, many years, we are the parties to be blamed. He's looking at me. Tan Sri talking about the kerangka yang diabaikan. You're right. FPK as the kerangka yang diabaikan. Abaikan is denied, isn't it? Right. If you use QRSG, questions, response, score, grade, approach of examination, and non-assessment, you won't be able to address holistic and humanizing. So we have to repent. Taubat. We brought in the word assessment. We don't use assessment in the past. The problem is, Tan Sri, we translated evaluation to pentaksiran. No. You have to say no. We translated evaluation to penilaian, Tan Sri. And we translated assessment to penilaian as well. Because we are good. 2 words in English, 1 word in Malay. But we were panicked when they discussed about the difference between evaluation and assessment. So we translated perbezaan antara penilaian dan penilaian. So I said, no, it is perbezaan di antara penilaian dan penilaian. It is where the subtext is. Whether penilaian or penilaian, penilaian or penilaian. So to settle, Tan Sri, we brought in the word assessment, which is pentaksiran. We borrow from LHDN. Okay. We try to address your concern, to address holistic and humanized education, because it is the assessment which create dehumanized education. It is the assessment technique we use, where we use only the examination at the end of 6 years or at the end of 11 years. You teach them for 11 years English, but you give us only 3 hours to examine them. We did our best to use that 3 hours. So, in terms of validity and reliability, is so challenging. Because validity talking about relevance and representativeness. So to address relevant and representativeness, teaching English for 11 years in 3 hours is of course the challenge. But we did well so far. We did well to dehumanize your humanizing education. So Tan Sri, I'm sorry. All right. Then we try to address this question by humanizing assessment. Because we thought that humanizing assessment is the smartest way to address the problem of not addressing the FPK and dehumanizing education. We thought. And we have the attempt. We have the formula of humanizing assessment. I cannot run away from this, Tan Sri. I always forgot. It's forgotten. Okay. Now, be with me. Slowly, slowly. I have this formula. HA equal to BB. Oh, I'm honored. Some of you are taking note. BB plus I plus CA. This is our attempt, Tan Sri. First, HA is humanizing assessment equal to BB, broadening the base. BB, you have to broaden the base. The base has been so narrow, Tan Sri. It is 3-hour base. Now we have to broaden into 11 years or 6 years. And I is inclusive. So you have to address the inclusivity, not exclusive. What is exclusive here? Exclusive means to be successful in the examination, you have to be able to read and write. Because our examination talking about QRSG, questions, response, score, grade. You have to be able to read the question and you have to be able to write your response in order to get score and grade. Those who cannot read and write will not be able to get the grade, therefore fail. This is dehumanizing education. Do you agree, Tan Sri? Okay, thank you. Okay, now what is broad base? Let me tell you about the base of assessment. It's so simple. The base of assessment talking about who, why, and what. Who are you assessing? Ladies and gentlemen, now you are assessing Generation Z and Generation Alpha. Who are Generation Z? Who is Generation Z? They are taking note also. Let me read for you. Generation Z, born between 1995 to 2009. Some of you may be Generation Z. Most do not remember life without the internet and have had technology like smartphone. You don't have smartphone, Tan Sri? iPad, smartboards, and other devices available throughout most of their schooling. That is Z. Alpha, born since 2010, they are younger than smartphone, the iPad, 3D television, and Instagram, and music streaming apps like Spotify. Okay, that is the first generation likely to see the 22nd century in large number. Okay, who are you assessing? They are human. So we have to humanize assessment. You cannot have all the time standardized assessment, right? So we have to change the standardized examination to humanized assessment. How do you humanize assessment? You have to broaden the base of assessment. And the base of assessment in terms of why. That one's in terms of who. In terms of why, talking about the reason of assessment. You have to stop talking about the reason of assessment in terms of summative assessment for grading. Now you have to address the humanized education by assessment of learning, assessment for learning, assessment as learning. You're going to talk about that tomorrow, inshallah. And then you have to also talking about the formative assessment and summative assessment for development. So assessment for grade need to be transformed to assessment for development. Number 3, talking about broadening the base. Now we talk about what are you assessing. Tan Sri have just told you that you are not just assessing for the grade. Knowledge, cognitive skill developed in the subject is not good enough to develop holistic person, to develop harmonious person. You have to measure the construct of knowledge, cognitive skill, physical attribute, leadership, inclusive, social responsibility, mindfulness, lifelong, and global learning. All these need to be addressed in your assessment. In other words, you have to assess all this. Of course, the 3 hour at the end of 11 years won't be able to cater all this. So you have to introduce assessment, which is one of them is the classroom-based assessment. Whether you can address it or not, Tan Sri, but you have to start. You have to try to address it. You have to widen the scope. You have to broaden the base from just addressing the cognitive, the academic only at the end of 11 years by using a 3-hour rule, but you have to broaden it to address the holistic and the humanized. Hopefully you can do that. Now, with that, then we introduce the SPPK, Sistem Pentaksiran Pendidikan Kebangsaan. For the first time, we use the pentaksiran in place of penilaian, because penilaian is an evaluation. Now, some of us have this formula, pentaksiran equal to measurement plus evaluation. Assessment equal to measurement plus evaluation. Not only measurement, not only evaluation, but together you have to measure and evaluate. Okay, finally, to do so, you have to be competent. You have to be competent. When you are talking about assessment, Tan Sri, you are not leaving the assessment process to the examiner, but you are going to give the assessment responsibility to all. We are talking about 360. The student themselves must assess themselves. The student must assess themselves. The teachers must assess the student. The peer must assess their friends. The parent must doing also the assessment work. So this is called the 360. Our challenge, Tan Sri, is how to make all the assessors competent. Because without a competent assessor, you won't be able to address the humanizing assessment. So if you don't have the humanizing assessment, it will be challenging to have humanizing education. The first, you have to take the first step is to humanize assessment. What we believe in, broadening the base, addressing the inclusivity, and having all the competent assessor. I mean, we have to make all the assessors competent. With the competent assessor, we will be able to present the humanizing assessment. With the humanized assessment, we hope that we can address the humanizing education. We have tried, Tan Sri. This is the attempt. And we try to really push this to the classroom, to the school base. Hopefully, we can make history addressing your concern on humanizing education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khodori. Thank you so much. All right, can we now have Dr. Rahimah?
Thank you, Datin, moderator. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good evening to everyone present here today. See, I am very honored to be sitting here with all the great people. But at the same time, I feel so small, although physically I'm not that small. Okay, now we have listened to our professor and also Dr. KHODORI talking about humanizing education and also humanizing assessment, right? We are all teachers here, right? Right? So now it is up to us to implement what they have already aspired. Have we done that? Do you think we have done that? Yes or no? Yes. Yes, inshallah. At least we have tried. We have tried, right? Okay, Dr. KHODORI mentioned about sistem pentaksiran pendidikan kebangsaan, the National Educational Assessment System, okay, whereby we combine, it's not just the standardized and centralized examinations per se, but now we have already included what we call as school-based assessment. And it is very unique here in Malaysia that our school-based assessment is not talking about what happens in the classroom itself, okay? It consists of 4 components, Prof. Tan Sri, sorry. Okay, 4 components, 2 academic components, and then the other 2 components will be under the non-academic. All right, are we familiar with this? So that means we have already implemented, but how far or how successful has it been? That is a big question, okay? So let us just go through the National Educational Assessment System to really understand what our Tan Sri and also Dr. KHODORI have aspired just now. Shall we? Okay, so remember just now QRSG, Dr. KHODORI was talking about, if I were to look at here, so it will be on your right and my left, right? Talking about the examination, the 3-hour examination and so forth. So we are very familiar and we are very confident with examinations, correct? Why do you think we are very confident with the standardized and centralized examination? Anyone would like to try? Why are we so confident with that kind of exam rather than the school-based assessment? Nobody would like to try? Because there are scores, there are grades, and they are standardized. Meaning to say everyone who sits for the exam will have the same type of questions And then at the end of the day, it means, it's more reliable, supposedly. Okay? All right. So it's okay. There's nothing wrong with the examination, Dr. Kot. Okay? There's nothing wrong. There is a need because every assessment has got a purpose. So for our examination, especially the standardized and centralized examination, they are supposedly to be, the purpose for it is actually certification, right? Especially SPM, STPM, STAM, SVM, and so forth. Okay, so the purpose is there. But when we talk about school-based assessment, okay, with the 4 components, 2 talking about the academic, hopefully we will cover the cognitive part of our learners, and the non-academic, which will cover the emotional, the physical, and also spiritual, spiritual as well, with the non-academic components. So we have tried that, but I think we have not seen a big success of it yet. Okay, we have implemented. How many years have we implemented school-based assessment in the primary school? Anyone would like to try? How many years have we implemented it? 12 years, good, alhamdulillah, because we started in 2011 with our year 1 students, year 1 pupils, and then we started with Form 1 students in the secondary schools in 2012, 2012. How many of us here are a bit disappointed when UPSR and also PT3 were abolished since last year? How many of us? Are we relieved? Happy? Happy or not happy? Not happy. See, Tan Sri, we would like to change, but we still need time for us to change, inshallah, okay? We are not happy because we are used to it and we are more confident with the examination, the standardized examination. Nevertheless, let's talk about the school-based assessment for us to really understand what it is and how we should be able to actually carry out so that the aspiration of humanizing education and humanizing assessment will be a success. All right? So, classroom-based assessment. When talk about CBA, my mind always thinks of about competency-based assessment rather than classroom-based assessment. But today we are talking about classroom-based assessment, okay? So that means every one of us teachers here, in fact, my teachers in my school days, during my school days, all right? For example, Prof. Aino's mother was my teacher in year 2, okay? Even then, my teacher had implemented classroom-based assessment. Right or not? No? Not sure. Right or not? So meaning to say all of us have already done classroom-based assessment in one way or another. Or either we realize it or we don't. Okay? But here, once we have NEAS being implemented, we are supposed to really understand that it has been made systematically, okay? The classroom-based assessment and so forth have been made formally and also systematically. Although it has been, been carried out and implemented without us realizing it. Okay, all right. So just to take us back to our school-based assessment. So we have our classroom-based assessment, whereby we talk about formative, summative assessment. We'll be talking about assessment for learning, as learning, and also off learning, okay, which we will discuss tomorrow, inshallah, okay. And then we have the PAJSK, looking at the physical and also the spiritual as well, because we are talking about leadership to be seen, to be assessed, perhaps during co-curricular activities and so forth, right? And then we have our psychometric assessment, which I think many of us do not really use the results of the assessment, the psychometric assessments. Okay? For psychometric assessments, actually for us to look at our learners' innate and also acquired abilities, as well as their inclinations and also interests, and also their personality, because there are various inventories at different levels of our students' learning. Okay, so we have to make use of all these in order for us to help our learners, our students, to learn, to develop their learning, which sometimes we have forgotten. We take it as like QRSG, administer the test, and then we have got the results, we have come up with some analysis and so forth, but we do not make use of the results to help our learners in their learning. So we have to, although psychometric assessments, of course, is under the counselors' responsibilities, their responsibilities. Actually, we teachers have to ask our counselors, all right, or guru bimbingan counseling, get the information to help our students. Sometimes every one of us has different learning styles. So are our students. They have different ways of learning. Sometimes they need to move around. Some students, they need to sit quietly, you know, they can read all by themselves. So we need to know by looking at their psychometric assessments. Okay? All right, I think I'll just stop there for a while.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rahimah. All right, our last presenter is Prof. Dr. ABTAR. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Excuse me. Good evening, and it's a pleasure to be with all the teachers here. I think you had a long day, but as Tan Sri said, it's nice to see so many fresh faces this evening. I acknowledge all the other speakers before this who've given you quite a bit of information related to the classroom-based assessment. As a teacher, I've actually taught in the secondary schools, in the teacher training colleges, and at 2 universities in Malaysia. Our role has always been teacher training. So I think something might have gone wrong somewhere in teacher training as well, yeah? So not only the pentaksiran and penilaian, Dr. KHODORI, not only the syndicate has gone wrong, probably teacher training has also left some important aspects of training of teachers in assessment. It's never easy for a teacher, especially if you are new, to get into the ever-changing scenarios in the schools. You know, there are always so many new advances that are happening, and you have to catch up. But one thing that I like to share with teachers here today is, we as teachers, we have a big responsibility. The students in our classrooms, for that number of hours they are in the school, are our sole responsibility in terms of making it work for them, whatever we are teaching. I want to quote a World Bank report that said 10-year-olds in most developing and underdeveloped countries could not read and understand a paragraph. 10-year-olds. So where have we gone wrong? What is it that we are doing in the classrooms? Don't even talk about assessments, yeah? What is happening that is not happening right? So this is a great thing to reflect upon. So now from there, I want to go into the assessment. Actually, I think the two important aspects of assessments that my learned professors have been talking about are the formative and summative assessment. Take yourself. We stay with few classrooms teaching our subject. So all of you are English, right? For a year. So let's say we take the normal January to November. From January to November, let's say I'm a teacher teaching year 3. Can I make an impact? How do we ask ourselves that question? Can I make an impact? The first thing we have to ask is, can I make an impact on all the students in my classroom? And how do I check if I have made an impact? So assessment is a great way. You can use the assessments to check if you have made an impact. But because in our classroom, sometimes we have 30, 40, 50 students, it is so difficult to do it, right? Using pen and paper is one thing difficult. Number 2, it consumes a lot of your time to assess the learners, where they are, how they are performing, especially when you are doing formative assessment. Okay? Now, formative assessment, all of you know, is forming, from the word formative. You are forming the learner. How do you form the learner? By giving constant feedback. Now, if you have 50 students in the classroom, are you able to ensure that for that 40 minutes or 50 minutes you are with them, are you able to ensure by the end of 40, 50 minutes, you all write your learning outcomes, right? For that 40 minutes, you have learning outcomes, right? By the end of this 40 minutes or whatever, the student should be able to blah, blah, blah. Do you know if they have achieved? How do you know? Do you know if they have achieved? How do you know at the end of 40 minutes? It's next to impossible for us. Because what happens is you have some very active students. They are the ones who keep on putting up their hands and you are the one who keep on picking them. Now the quiet ones are the ones that are losing out of the game. So at the end of the year, you have this bell curve, which is very dangerous actually, that bell curve. We are measuring the students on a bell curve. We don't want to measure students on a bell curve. But before that, so that we don't get that bell curve, before that, what do? We need to ensure that all the formative assessments that are being given in the classroom, number 1, they are well-written assessments. I think Dr. KHODORI mentioned about that. The validity and reliability of the assessment instrument. Now, I think most teachers have got panels, yeah? And I think your panels are an interesting way to get questions verified. And I think you do it, right? So now you have the questions, and the next thing you want to do is the most important thing in formative assessment is to give feedback to your students. As I know, a lot of feedback is ticking onto in the textbook, in the exercise book, or crossing, but not telling the students if they are doing it right or wrong. How do I know that? When my kids were growing, I think this is a perennial problem. When my kids were growing up, they have to write karangan or essay. And they would come back to me and say, Mom, I need to write this karangan. I said, okay, go write it on the computer. and bring a copy to me. I will check it for you, right? But not many kids have that privilege of the parents who will give that kind of time to them. We were teachers. We had a lot of time for our kids. But not many parents have that kind of time. So what do you do as a teacher now for formative assessment? What can you use? How can you help this student? Because the student can't get it in the classroom. There are too many of them. There is just one of you. What is the best way to get formative assessments to students so that they constantly get that feedback? How many of you think that using digital technologies can help you and the student progress? Digital technologies, how many of you? Now you all have gone through this digital learning process in the last 3 years, yeah? I mean, we have been talking about digital learning I've been talking about digital learning for almost 30 years. But digital learning only became a reality when the pandemic hit us. But we did it, right? I mean, you teachers did a great job using the digital technologies to get to your students. The important thing now to realize is doing formative assessments using digital technologies is a great way to support your students. They need it. And we use it a lot in the universities. I think teachers can do it in the classroom. I do think that students are not allowed to bring the gadgets into the classroom, but you can do posts. Tan Sri made a very important statement. He said, is classroom alone enough to develop a child holistically? No. You are within the 4 walls. No. What you can do as a teacher is post-classroom. Now, post-classroom, a lot of our students, now this is a recent study in Malaysia. There is a 96% penetration of internet in Malaysia. And on average, a Malaysian spend about 8 hours on their digital technologies. I don't think these are wrong because when I look at myself and I reflect on myself, sometimes at the traffic light, I'm holding my mobile out. No? I'm sure a lot of you are doing that too. But thankfully, we do a lot at the traffic lights. So I think that as much as we are doing, your students are also on these mobile gadgets. Some of the teachers I have met, I think I can mention Teacher Tila, I met her, and a few others, they use a lot of digital technologies to ensure their students are progressing at the rate that they want them, and they can achieve those classroom-based learning outcomes we are talking about. These are very simple principles and practices, but we need to do it. Now, what can we do? There's a huge group of teachers here. You can form alliances with each other and say, look, I will prepare year 3 formative assessments. If you prepare year 3, you prepare some parts of year 3, I will prepare and let's share digitally. Now you have the Delima platform, right? How many of you are using the Delima platform? Excellent. I think this is great to know. So in the Delima platform, you can upload all these assessment questions, you can share, and now we need to share. We are teachers because if we don't share, we don't have anybody else to help us. Impossible to do anything on your own. So use the digital technologies, create the digital spaces for your students. What is this digital space that we are talking about? It's a place where all students can get into and all teachers can get into. You already have Delima. You can even use your Google Classroom. You can even use, the number of digital tools that you can get access to are numerous. And again, not only the digital tools, there are a lot of resources in the digital space for you to use, especially assessments. So I do encourage, because for summative, it is something that you need to do in the classroom. But for formative, you can send your students to the digital space, create those assessments. Now, is it very difficult to create assessments? How many of you say it's difficult to create assessment questions? No more. If you say yes, no more. You have generative AI to help you now. Now, we have run 3 workshops for teachers, okay, on how to create assessments in a jiffy. You put the learning outcome, you put the content, you tell the generative AI to create the assessments. Now, those assessments are for formative, and you can collect those assessments and dump them into the Lalima platform or any other platform and allow your students to get the feedback, because in any digital platform, feedback is easy to build. Now, so you can test the students. You can say, okay, go back today, do this, and as a teacher, you get all the analytics. So then you can track the students on whether they are doing well in the formative assessments. So for the summative assessments, I won't touch, but there's still a lot to say about how we can digitally create different kinds of summative assessments for our students. So I will rest here for now, and then maybe pick up a little bit more in the next round of our discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. ABTAR. All right, thank you all. Thank all the speakers for a very interesting, informative, insightful discussion. Okay, I will just try my very best to just sum it up, okay? Please bear with me. Okay, I think Tan Sri spoke about developing balanced and harmonious students, humanizing education. Dr. KHODORI gave us a lot of formulas, okay? And I think HA equals BB plus I plus CA. See, I'm very good, okay. We talked about humanizing assessments, broadening the base, being inclusive in the class assessment, right? And then Dr. Rahimah talked about CBA. Now, all of us have experienced it one way or another in school, and now it is just being formalized and something that is systematic. We need to make use of the results to enhance students' learning. Okay? And then we had Dr. ABTAR, who asked us these questions. Can I make the impact, when I'm teaching my students? How do I check if I am making an impact? Okay? And what I found interesting was formative means to inform the learner, not just the teacher, but inform the learner. So giving feedback is very important. And she talked also about using the digital space. Okay? So basically, it was this. Right? Thank you all very much. We haven't ended yet. Now, are there any questions, any dying questions that you would like to ask? Yes, thank you very much. It would be good if you could please state your name. And, you may want to direct the question to a particular speaker or not.
Testing. Okay. Sorry, good evening to all the panel speakers and moderator. My question, I'm Vital Krishna from SK Sri Kapong, Sentul District. My question is on the assessment. Since we are talking about humanizing assessment, humanizing education, but my concern is here, I think research and development can be carried out more, because as a teacher and executor level, what I'm thinking, when I'm giving a TP5 for my kid in assessment, and another teacher from PERA is giving TP4. Sorry, I'm giving TP4, and another teacher in PERA is giving TP5 for a question. But my concern is now, when I compare the quality of my student and the student who got TP5, actually my student is able to get TP6. And that student is not even eligible to get TP3, but the teacher has given TP5 because there is no standardized assessment given. So my concern and question here is, the student who is going to go for an interview for MRSM or science schools or whatever schools that need this school-based assessment gradings, the TP5 and TP6 stands a higher chance to get the placement compared to my students is more eligible. So how do we, how do we use this assessment as a very quality assessment in, in hiring or getting the students into MRSM or what so not? So my question is, if these students are going to go MRSM, where he can't even perform at the school level, and these students are going to go MRSM or Scholar Science, and they're going to go to university and so on. So I'm still confused. If there is no standardized kind of method, example, in universities you have 60% of coursework, 40% of exam. Why not we do like that? Why 100% assessment when we ourselves are still in a state of confused? I think the bahagian pembangunan kurikulum, lembaga peperiksaan, when I am in the execution or as a pelaksana, I think informations are being diluted. State by state, it's getting diluted. Perak different, Selangor different, Kedah different. You know, because I came from Selangor to KL, things are so different. This is apple, this is orange, but it's the same destiny. So that is my question. I hope, Prof. Cynthia, you can summarize it in a very nice way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think I'm going to summarize it, but I will get one of the speakers. Any one of the speakers brave enough to answer the question?
This is a very difficult question to answer. But I think this is what I mean by gerhana pentaksiran. Because we are talking about pentaksiran in the framework of peperiksaan. Then we have to taubat juga nih. You know, when we shift standardized examination to humanized assessment, there's a big shift there. There's a big shift from focusing on the examination to focusing on the development. The TP started from the banding. We are not talking about score, you know. We are talking about tangga. We are talking about ladder. And we hope that all of our students, 500,000 of our students, will reach TP6. Okay? When we assess them at TP3, TP is tahap penguasaan, TP3, we have to work in the assessment mode, not in the peperiksaan mode, to help them, to show them the way to reach TP6. So it is when and where, which we don't know. But our effort in assessment must end up with feedback and feed forward, not end up with score and grade. That one is QRSG. We have to shift from QRSG to ERRA. What is that? Fazira, ERRA. Environment reaction, recognition, and acknowledgement. Shift that from QRSG. If you are talking about assessment in the framework of examination, yes, you talk about standardized. You talk about if you have TP6 in Pulau Pinang, here also TP6. Wow, that one you talk about peperiksaan. You talk about score. You talk about grade. Now let's talk about the development. How can we help the student to develop themselves using that TP? I'm looking at you, Tan Sri. All right, that shift. So that's what we mean by the shift. When you are talking about the examination, when you are talking about the standard examination, we give the score in a retrospective manner, what they have done before. That's what examination all about. But when we shift to assessment, we want to report, not only give them not only feedback, but also feed forward in a not retrospective. The opposite is prospective, Tan Sri. Thank you very much. Dah lupa dah. Not in retrospective, but instead in a prospective manner. So, thank you very much for giving this question. For as far as I'm concerned, the TPTP is not the score. The TPTP is a tangga for you to help your student develop better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. KHODORI. Okay, there is a question here that I think is very much related to this standardization. I can understand where some of the teachers are coming from when you talk about, you know, the disparity, right? So the teacher's concern about professional judgment. All right, so maybe Dr. KHODORI, you want to continue? Or any of the other speakers talk about professional judgment.
Okay, before I go into the professional judgment, can I go back to the, I forgot the name of the teacher, so sorry, about disparity, right? I think it occurs, or that happens, because we lack of knowledge and also assessment literacy. So as teachers, we have to acquire the knowledge and be competent and confident in assessing our students. Meaning to say that if the students or the learners, what we say in Bahasa Melayu, berhak mendapat TP tersebut, maka berikanlah dia mengikut kelayakan dia lah. But in order to do that, definitely we need to have knowledge. Knowledge on how to ensure an assessment is valid, is reliable, and also has got some fairness. Because these three elements in or principles in assessment, right? We have to make sure that by making professional judgment, it's not just merely our own point of view. We have to base on something before we make the professional judgment. So all the instruments that we have used, whether it is in the form of very structured and formal or less structured and also informal, any kind of instruments that we can use, okay? Only based on the evidence from the instruments that we have already administered, then we can make our professional judgment. It's not just merely seeing the person, okay, this student will get TP6, that student because very naughty, I give him TP1 or 2. No, it has to be based on some evidence. And these evidence we gather from information that we get from the instruments. The instruments may not be in the form of paper and pencil alone. The instrument can be chit-chat like this. While we are talking to our students, we can see whether they are able to communicate and to comprehend whatever that we have already talked about, for example. So that is kind of an instrument, okay? Or maybe we want to assess holistically the spiritual and so forth, right? Rather than giving paper and pencil tests, we can actually give projects. Meaning to say that in classroom-based assessment, alternative assessments are preferred to the paper and pencil tests. Okay, so alternative assessment will come in many forms, whether it is project-based, whether it is performance assessment, whether it is an authentic assessment, all those kinds of non-traditional assessment would fall under alternative assessments. And I'm sure we teachers have already carried out, okay, alternative assessments. Okay, I hope that answers some of the concerns.
I'd like to add on. I think both professors have given you an excellent idea about that professional judgment. To the gentleman who asked the question, you are a leader in your classroom. All of us are leaders in our classroom. As leaders, you make decisions. How do you make the decision? What is helping you to make the decision as a leader in the classroom? Two things. Apart from your professional literacy in assessment, which is very, very important, and we find big gaps in people who are not literate in writing or understanding assessments. There are huge gaps, even at the university level. I think more so at the university level. Now, as a teacher in the classroom, you are a leader, and you need to lead these students somewhere. Where do you lead these students? Where? Who is telling you where to lead them, or what is telling you where to lead them in the classroom? Anyone? The learning outcome. You have a goal every time you enter the classroom, the learning outcome. And you have a great syllabus. You already got a lot of things prepared for you. Your role is to implement it. To implement it, you align the learning outcome to the content and to the formative assessment. Because in the classroom, if you are doing formative assessments, you can achieve that. But for summative assessment, you need a panel for that professional judgment, because that panel will then decide, okay, these are the things that we will evaluate for holistical development of the student. But in the classroom, you can do the observations of the different attributes of the student, behavioral attributes, yeah, attitudinal attributes, cognitive attributes, spiritual, because spiritual attributes are demonstrated in so many ways in the classroom. You don't need to know what religion it is, but you know what is spiritual attribute all about. So you can do all these things, but the learning outcome must be clear. Today, I'm going to be observing this apart in this. For this, I'm teaching. These are the other attributes I'm also going to. These are the effective attributes I'm also. So your learning outcomes are very crucial for you. You need to know. When you enter the classroom, you know you have a mission for 40 minutes. Make it mission possible, not impossible. So that your learners come out and they say, oh my God, that was the best session, that was the best 40-minute session I had with this teacher. They need to speak like that. Learners will only speak like that if you ensure that you have done your prior homework. I think this is something that we are observing as teacher trainers for me, teacher trainer for the past 30-odd years. This is something that I think we can do quite easily as teachers in the classroom and make the impact. I am still a teacher after 30-odd years, and I'm still enjoying it. So I think there is some magic somewhere to be a teacher. The magic are our students.
Thank you, Dr. ABTAR. Can I add on to one more criteria for the magic? The magic is passion. You have to be passionate about teaching. All right, we have one question from Live EDU Web TV. This is from William Mark Joseph Raj. His question is this, very interesting. Can we say that the big number of enrollment in a class has dehumanized teachers to dehumanize the assessment? I think the best person to answer this would be Tan Sri.
I believe so. I believe so. I mean, it's always very fascinating to hear everybody talks about technology. Yeah, but we still have big classrooms. I thought technology is supposed to customize, personalize, you know. What Prof was talking about is something that we dreamed of. But the reality on the ground, it is not so. At the end of the day, we are still talking about this disparity, about the uneven distribution of technology. The Prime Minister is talking about Starlink and Elon Musk and stuff like that. I mean, this is 60 years after independence. So how do you humanize it is to make sure that technology is well distributed. And I don't think that's rocket science. You know, we hear people giving this paranti and on and so forth, all of sometimes almost like a gimmick. But yet you see and you hear of this. There's no other solution to this except to be very, very clear about what we are trying to achieve at the end of the day. We're talking about not just the computers, we're talking about still now, in the Prime Minister's speech, about dilapidated schools. Forget about computers. That alone is already dehumanizing. You know? So my take on this is very simple. That if you are really serious about education, dignify them. Dignify the students, dignify the staff, you know, professionalize them. So all these questions that you raise will not be here because you've gone through a thorough training. And this is what Finland is doing. You keep on quoting Scandinavian countries. You know, when I asked the minister what makes so special about Finland, he says we work on a culture of trust, not technology. We work on the culture of trust so much so, sometimes they don't even have evaluation. Or if they have evaluation, they evaluate on their own merit using this professional judgment that you talk about. And they're very confident about it. I think this is the issue that we have not been talking about. We have been skirting these issues, you know. The whole issue about how the system evolved, the ecological system as far as education is concerned, is very, very clear. I like what Dr. KHODORI was saying about broadening the base. That could be a solution, I think. And I just want to quote what my university is trying to do in this particular context. We are talking about community-based education. In other words, every student in IIUM now must have a community project. We teach them how to profile the community. We teach them how to analyze. We teach them how to give solutions. You know, we give them how to actually run the whole project for the first semester. And in the second semester, after looking at what they have done, they implement it. And we will see what the impact is all about. You know. And this is something that we have done over the last 3 years. And the third year, I think, has brought a lot more significant impact in terms, I don't know whether they call it assessment or I think it's more of assessment. At the end of the day, what is the student's feedback to me? He says, Tan Sri, 1 semester in the village is worth more than 1 year in my classroom. I don't have a textbook to rely on. I rely on my own thinking. You know, I have an opportunity to discuss with a person that I'm going to work with later on. I know where they're coming from. I know what wisdom they've got that I don't have in my textbooks. I'm discovering that I can also initiate something that otherwise I have not been able to do it. You know? So our student himself in this particular context becomes a producer of knowledge. The professor doesn't know about this because the professor has no experience that the students are going through. I thought that was education. You know? And that is not difficult. At the end of the day, when you have a symposium, the last symposium, when we look at what the student has done, we have got 160 projects to be evaluated or to be assessed. I'm not too sure which one now. But we call in the experts, people from the industry, people from the community, people who are related to this. And I think almost half of the project are now supported by those people who come and judge it. They liked it. They say this is something that they can use for the future in developing the community. That's the end product. I don't know whether it's a linked outcome, But the students are pretty excited over this. It's not about I'm getting grade A, but still doesn't know how to translate knowledge into practice. Now they are doing it. And I see this as this broadening base of education. No more the classroom. The classroom is perhaps one of those where you just transmit the information, but otherwise, how do you take this information out and make it into something which is substantial? If the university can do it, I think the school can do it. It doesn't have to be major. But to get the student into the community, learning the language of the community, learning how the community works, and respecting the community is something that I think we are relearning. And the reason is very simple. When the pandemic comes in, the first place to close down are the industries. The industries have been promising us job, this and that. When the pandemic comes, they were the first to close down. The university cannot close down. And so far we evolved this. And I think now it's making an impact. And we have won a number of prizes at international levels because of this kind of an approach. This is, I hope, humanizing education in the real sense of the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Okay, are there any more questions from the floor? Yes, thank you.
Good evening. A great discussion, from all the panelists over there. My name is Rabindra. I'd just like to, I think a concern on my part, from the title itself, classroom-based assessment. The word classroom plays a very important role here. My concern, ladies and gentlemen, is the purpose of assessment itself, right? What happens? The results of the assessments are made to match one student to another, one class to another, one school to another, one PPD to another, one state to another. At the end of the day, you will not be able to humanize anyone because you're matching one person to another. The whole purpose of assessment itself stays within the classroom. The whole purpose of assessment itself is for us to better our own teaching, to better the kids' learning so that they become human, humanize them for the real world. So what do you have to say about that, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you.
My thoughts of this classroom is, it depends on how you look at it, all right? I mean, the classroom is just by definition where you put your students in. As mentioned, there is a book called Deschooling Education, So in other words, it's not mandatory to have a classroom the way we have fashioned it. Now classroom takes a different form, right? So it depends on what you want to do with this classroom. Now you see classroom is being fashioned in a different way. The classroom that I was talking about earlier was a factory kind of classroom. That the teachers stay out front, the rest everybody is looking at you, just at how they organize a factory. Now if you have got numbers and you have other ways of organizing the classroom, by all means, again, depends on what is that you are trying to achieve at the end of the day. There's no one definition of what a classroom is all about. I don't know whether I'm answering your question, but the whole idea that the classroom must be fixed in this way is something that I think we need to change. I've got another experience for you. When we work with the Sekolah Amanah, the trust school, right? It's big classroom, but they organize them into clusters. And clusters of maybe 6 or 7. One cluster is maybe 5 students, or 6 students, depending on how big the classroom is. Now, exactly what the prof is saying, when the teacher asks a question, how do the student respond? Not by showing hand, saya cikgu, I teacher kind of a thing, Only the one that's vocal will say that. We give them, each of them has got a whiteboard and a marker. For every question, everybody must write the answer on the whiteboard and post it. So there's no fence sitters, there's no people who are going to take it easy. You must post an answer. All right? So everybody participate in that kind of a situation. And whoever has got the question, the answer wrong, then the cluster is supposed to advise this particular person why his answer is wrong. The teacher doesn't get involved. The teacher will just observe how the other students will tell you the answer is this one because of this. You know, there is another kind of collective learning among themselves. They begin to take charge of their own group without having the teachers to be involved. And therefore, participatory is almost total. Everybody gets involved. Your answer is wrong, you know why it is wrong, and somebody gives you the answer, why the answer is right, and so on and so forth. And that's a form of learning that I think we can experiment in a big classroom. I'm not too sure. Yeah? But if you keep on the old style of, raise up your hand and you've got 50 people, you don't know which hand, and the same hands comes up anyway. So it is up to us now, if the classroom is big and you have other ways of doing it, try it out. Why not? And so in this particular case, in the Scholar Amanah, I think some of you knows about this, yeah, we are teaching the students not to score, we are teaching how to be that complete person that I talked to you about. At the end of the day, the score comes in anyway. So it's not about trying to make PISA top 10 or top 30%, no. It's about how to teach them how to learn. And in that process, they become a good learner, and the score comes in anyway. So I don't know whether I'm answering your question, but there are solutions to this, unless and until, as I would like to iterate, whether we can shift the way we assess, the way we look at things, and move into a different direction. I think the statement is about human development rather than human progress. I use this word because there's a book that I think all of us should read called Cultural Shock by this year by Gallup. And Gallup says that human progress comes quickly with the Industrial Revolution, but not human development. Yeah? He says human progress comes quickly with Industrial Revolution, but not human development. What is human development? Is this total education that we talked about, rather than just moving from one level to another and getting these numbers. I believe we need to make the change, and that decision is ours, not anybody else. I agree, in the classroom, you are the boss, you make the decision, so that you then can progress the way you want it to be. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Zulkifli. Okay, we have time for one more question. Anybody? What? Yes. We only had questions from the men.
Good evening, I'm Roger. I'm honored to be standing in front of all the panelists. Okay, well, as we come from this academic background, we will sort of accept CBA due to the policy that we have to implement according to the orders from the higher level. My question is, how are we going to convince the parents out there to have the confidence in CBA? And as we know, we are seated here maybe for 3 days going to talk about this CBA and so on. But the pressure is outside there from the parents. At the end of the day, we have to listen to them, what they want, you see. So I'm one side I'm standing as an officer, the other side I'm standing as a parent. Okay, my son is from this CBA product. Until Form 4, I did not know where he stands. But when he comes back home, he say, I got 5 and 6. But now he's in Form 5. I'm waiting for his mid-year exam results to see where is he. You know, what is his progress in school and so on. So my concern is, how are we going to convince? Maybe we have the academic background, so we try to understand it, the technical part and so on, and might go leave this place after 3 days accepting CBA is a good thing to do. But how are we going to convince the parents? Thank you.
Thank you. Any of the speakers?
It's right. What is this education for? If the education is for grade, then we can solve in the exam hall. But if you are talking about the development, exam hall is not sufficient. You have to move your assessment to classroom. So the classroom-based and exam hall, you can have both. You can have classroom-based, classroom assessment, as well as exam hall assessment. But what we didn't have so far is the classroom assessment which address the development, the progress. We didn't take care of those. We just focus on the exam hall, which end up with the grade. If the parent outside, they're happy with the grade, they will end up with a grade. And how many, you know, how many percent lembaga peperiksaan gave straight A? How many percent? 2%. 2% after 200 over billion, and we can offer them 2%. Out of 500,000 is only 2%. 98% of the parent have to cry, and only 2% very happy. Yang masuk surat khabar is only 2%. Grade A, straight A is only 2%. And we focus on that. Our success rate in education is only 2%. So why don't we slowly move to the classroom assessment which address the development of the human being rather than the achievement in getting grades? Because many of them, including to the one who is talking now, fail to get that grade. I don't have SPM, you know. I ran away. Thank you. I don't think I'm fit for that grade. So I don't have SPM. Orang kata, you tak ada SPM, macam mana you nak masuk university? I can. I got my PhD from University of Sussex without SPM. So don't worry, but you must be worried if there is no development in class took place. Is the focus in only to get grades? So ladies and gentlemen, we try to address education. We try to address the aspiration of the falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan, which if we focus on the standardized exam, not to humanize assessment, I'm afraid that we won't be able to achieve the aspiration of falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, may I just share a story? I don't know whether it'll be relevant for that, but I have 37 years experience in the university. And when we get the students coming in, first year students coming in, university, the way they approach lectures and exams, it's a whole different way. And I've had students come in and then they sit for the exams. They have, not exams, assignments. As someone mentioned, it's 60-40, now it's 70-30 in some universities. And when we grade the students, they get C's, sometimes C-, C+, because what does it involve? It involves critical thinking, it involves a whole lot of other skills. Then I get the students come up to me and tell me, and this is, I'm not talking about a few, I'm talking about quite a number. They come up to me and they say, Prof, this is first year university. Prof, I'm a straight A student. Why am I getting C? And then you find, not a lot, but a few, very disillusioned. You know, and then you see they fall off. So, you know, the grade, for me, my philosophy is, and I've told that to my children, if you want to get a grade A, make sure it is a grade A. It is not just passing the exams. You know, they may survive till Form 5, but it's after that that defines who they are. Okay, I think with that, okay, before we end, I think we need to end. I would like very much for you to give a big round of applause to the speakers. It has certainly been a delightful discussion, very informative, and I've learned a lot as well. With that, I thank you all. And thank you all as well.
Hello? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for a very insightful discussion. I am very sure that there are a lot of things that we have gained from this forum. I am positive that when we leave this conference on Wednesday and when we go back, we will look at assessment from a different perspective. So again, thank you to the panel. I would like now to invite Dr. Kalminderjit Kaur, the Deputy Director of English Language Teaching Center, to give away the certificate of appreciation to the panel.